Welcome everyone to our community meeting tonight. We're going to talk about some key issues that are affecting the national park. My name is Dave Smith. I'm the park superintendent. Yes, ignore the man in the fourth row back there. He talks too much. I want to point out some of our key staff members, part of my team, that are just essential. Karen Maceros is my management assistant. She's going to be speaking a little bit later tonight about the pilot transportation program. Jane Rogers is our Chief of Science and Resource Stewardship, smartest woman on the planet. Patty Gerhardt is the Executive Assistant for the park. She's pretty outstanding. I've got Judy. Are you here somewhere? Judy Sokol's hiding in the back. She manages our fee program in the park, and she is just so excited about January 1st and how crazy that's going to be. And Lynn Gillet is in our back there. She's been doing permits for the park, so it's great to have her here. And here's our safety officer, Chuck. Hurd just showed up, but he's incognito tonight. So when I became superintendent at Joshua Tree, I just come from a civil rights park. I came from Brown versus Board of Education in Topeka, Kansas, where civil rights were really important. And the idea of community engagement is something really important. So part of my gut, part of my soul as a park ranger was always the community has to be part of the management and decision process of a national park. So here at Joshua Tree, I've kind of taken that as well, and I try to engage as often as possible with the public. Many of you have been in my office. I think about half the people in this audience right now have at one time stopped by to share their concerns about the park. And it's really helpful for me as a manager to have that input, because I have my perspective. White boy from San Diego, been in the Park Service for 25 years. That's my perspective on how I see things, but it's great to have everyone else's perspective to help make me a more full person. So the reason we had the meeting tonight was to talk about the transportation plan that we have at Joshua Tree that's going to be implemented February 1st, to talk about the potential for reservations at some of our campgrounds inside the park, and then to have a public forum. Well, the Secretary of the Interior and the President didn't talk to me about this until like a week ago when I got the press release that we're also going to be looking at a potential fee increase for 17 of our biggest revenue parks in the United States. I realize that's the 2,000-pound elephant in the room, and so it makes a lot more sense that we begin our discussion tonight talking about that. So I'm going to give you some information about that. Give you a chance to ask some questions about that, and I'm going to really, really encourage you, including you, John Loretic, who's talking in the middle of my presentation, to let the Secretary know what your concerns are about the fee increase and whether you support it or whether you don't support it, and ideas that might help him out as much as possible. So tonight we're going to start with the fee increase discussion. We're going to move over to transportation, and Karen Maceros is going to discuss that, and we'll wind out the evening talking about the reservations for the campgrounds inside the park. Click. So why are we here tonight? We're here because the Secretary of the Interior, which is a presidential appointee, Department of the Interior manages the National Park Service. When he took his office in April, he realized that there was a huge backlog maintenance and across the entire system. So $11.5 billion in backlog maintenance. And what does that mean? It means that the parks that we have, the infrastructure over the last 100 years has not been maintained at the level it needs to be maintained. Things break down. Roads need to be fixed, buildings need to be repaired, trails get washed out. Here at Joshua Tree, our backlog maintenance as of last year was about $60 million, which is a big chunk of change because our operational budget for the national park is around $6 million. So we really, out of that $6 million, we can't use any of that for backlog maintenance. There's nothing left over. So we use our fees that come in, that we get from campgrounds and we get from special uses and we get from entry into the park to help pay for a lot of that infrastructure inside the park. And over the years, as we've had fee increases in the number of people coming into this park, that number has gone up considerably. When I started working here 4 years ago, our annual fee dollars were about $3 million. And we used that to do some of our backlog maintenance, used to fund some of our positions in the park where we could. But this year, we're looking at about $8.5 million. It's gone up considerably in a relatively short amount of time. And I think the Secretary is looking at a way that other parks, the other 16 big revenue parks across the United States, can do similar things and raise revenue and put that into backlog maintenance. So, so on October 20th, we received word that this is going to move forward and that the Secretary wanted to implement it at Joshua Tree on January 1st. So we would be the first park in the United States that actually experiences the $70 entrance fee into the park, which is a little bit scary for us because this is going to be a tough time because it's a big jump. It's going from $25 per car to $70 per car. Click. So we are in a 30-day period right now where Secretary Zinke has asked the public to make comments. So I really want to encourage you guys, when you go home tonight, next week or so, we've got some little cards over here that I'm going to show you. I encourage you all to grab one. There are 3 addresses on this, 3 web addresses and then 1 physical address that you can make your comments to. The first one regards the fee increase, and the other 2 regard the reservation system and the transportation system. So I encourage you to make comments and grab one of these cards. So in the next 30 days, actually the next 20 days or so, you need to do that. I talked to the Deputy Director of Park Service yesterday morning about this, and she says, so far they've gotten about 5,000 or 6,000 comments coming in, and usually, we hardly get any at all on things like this. I would really strongly encourage you to let your feelings be known, because all of those have to be read, they have to be cataloged so that it can help advise the Secretary. And then I want to encourage you to direct your comments to Washington. I have no say over this. When I got the information that this was going to move forward, and I called Washington for advice on this, they said, well, this is coming from the Secretary's office. It's not coming necessarily from the National Park Service. It's coming from his initiative. So we don't really have a role in analyzing what your feelings are. I can answer your questions tonight about it, and you can, state your feelings, but I don't have a lot to say about that. So before we move on to our next 2 things we want to talk about, I want to open it to you right now. Do you have any questions about the fee project?
Is the public comment period for the NPS's public comments, or are we commenting to the Department of Interior?
So you're going to be commenting. The way we're managing it, it's through the Park Service that it goes through, but the decision is going to be made by the Secretary of the Interior. So you can contact the Secretary directly. You can go to the Park Service website that's been set up and let your comments be known. Am I making sense?
Yeah, I never heard of a public comment period for the Department of Interior. I've heard of NPS public comment periods.
Well, you're hearing something new tonight, which is really exciting. You're here at the cusp of some exciting times.
I'm not sure they're going to listen. That's what I'm saying. Well, they'll listen.
Yeah, so it's all being handled out of Washington. It's not being handled at the park level. Any other questions about the fees? And Meg's got, my helpful assistant over here, my gaffer, Meg Foley, is going to pass it over to the loud guy back there.
Loud guy. Testing. So I didn't get a chance to really run those numbers, but you said our numbers increased by $5 million since you've been here, right? And so if you add that up, say $5 million over the other 16 parks that they're talking about doing this fee in, and we're talking about $11 billion backlog, are we even going to make a dent in that backlog with the $70 increase? I mean, how do those numbers add up?
Really good question, John. So Joshua Tree is kind of special because so many of our visitors come from Europe. They come to Los Angeles. They usually do a tour of many parks. This is the first place they come to, and a lot of them buy the America the Beautiful pass, and that's an $80 pass. And so our revenue has continued to go up as more and more European visitors come to this area. We've also gotten really popular in the Southland. We look at our visitation during the core season, more and more folks are coming out from LA and from San Diego and even from Phoenix and places like that. So they're the ones who are getting the $25. So Joshua Tree, our visitation numbers have exploded in the last 4 years. We've gone from 1.3 million visitors a year to this year almost 3 million visitors a year. So that's a huge increase, and that's partly responsible for the increase in funding coming into the park. Also, we did a fee increase at Joshua Tree when I first came on board. President Obama at the time directed the national parks to engage the community about what we could do about increasing fees. And the community said, you know, a $10 raise in fees is something that's acceptable. And we did that $5 one year, we waited 2 years, we did another $5. And that was based on community input, and that's where we are today. So the department is estimating right now that we will gain $70 million through this operation. The operational budget for the National Park Service is $3 billion. Our backlog maintenance is $11.5 billion. We plan to earn an additional $70 million. So you're right, it is a very small percentage of the backlog maintenance, and backlog maintenance grows every year. You know, roads deteriorate every year, so that number goes up. I don't, you know, from my estimates, I don't think it's going to keep pace with the growth. No problem. May, can you pass the...
Hi, David. I had a question about that pass that you just mentioned, the America the Beautiful pass, I think you called it. What percentage of the $25 daily fee does our park keep? And then what percentage of the $80 national? And then there's a part after that.
Hold on to that microphone as much as possible.
One, two. There we go. Let's use that one.
Pass it around.
So 80% of all of our fee dollars, whether it comes through the America the Beautiful Pass or through the Day Pass or through the Senior Pass, or those are the only ones we saw, or through the Park Pass, 80% of it stays in the park. And there's a law that was passed. It's called the Federal Land Recreation Enhancement Act. It was originally passed in a demonstration like 20 years ago. Congress was really keen on it, and they said, parks, this is how you're going to do business now. You're going to use 80% of what you gather in fees, and it's going to motivate you to collect fees, and you're going to use that to enhance visitor projects inside the parks, things that will benefit the visitors. So toilets, roads, trails, new interpretive programs that are specific to a little project. You're going to do all those things. And then a few years back, our direction from Washington was 55% of that has to go to backlog maintenance. So of the 80% that we take, 55% of that has to go to backlog maintenance. So you're like, well, David, we really want to see more rangers on the road. We want more interpretive programs. We want more science going on in the park. I can't use that money to do those things. It has to go to backlog maintenance. So we're motivated to collect more money, but it's got to go to backlog maintenance. And the other 20% goes to parks that don't charge. So there's another 300 parks across the United States, and they compete for that money. And it's odd, but I've got to compete for the money that we raise. So Jane will come up with a project that says, I want to study visitor capacity and traffic patterns inside the park so we can put up new signs and get traffic to flow better. And so she puts in a project. We approve it at the park level. It goes to San Francisco. They might approve it. It goes to Washington, gets approved. So it's a really bureaucratic, crazy way to fund things.
So part two, I'll just speak up, is that all right? So part two of my question then, if so much of this goes to backlog maintenance, and in my opinion, we are saturated in our ability to maintain the park. As a matter of fact, I think the park is degrading because of the amount of visitors we're having now. So if money's not going to go to infrastructure and preparing the park for this influx of people, we're creating the situation where we're getting more people in with buses and reservations now, which will guarantee sites for masses for years on end. When can we start to see something to protect the park from all these people that are coming?
Yeah, really, really good question. So we still owe about $35 million in backlog maintenance, and they told us as soon as we get that down to zero, we have a lot more freedom where we can spend the fee dollars, and that's going to take a chunk of time.
Wow. Couple years, right? Or more?
It's probably going to take more than a couple of years.
What was the numbers you discussed with me the other day from this, was it 60?
So we went from 60 million down to 35 million, and the way we did that is we used a lot of federal highway dollars, so road dollars, and that was a big chunk. We still have about, I think, $20 million on roads we've got to do. We're going to do a lot of that this spring. That's going to bring it down another $5 or $6 million. I think we have $3 million in trails that we've got to get done, trails that have been washed out, that are in disrepair. but I hear you, and I'm trying to get as ingenious as possible right now to do that. For example, this year for the first time, we competed for the green tag money that you get if you have a motorcycle or an ATV. There's a fund out of there, which is a state fund. So we got that approved, and we're hiring a full-time ranger for that, who's going to do boundary patrols and work with people that are, using motorcycles off-road specifically. We're using money from fees from collection to get a ranger that helps in the collection. So it's a law enforcement ranger that's going to be out there. He's going to be picking up the money, but he's also going to be patrolling the park. So we're trying to get ingenious, and then, gosh, volunteers and partners, working with the Kellys of the world and the Seths of the world to make sure that when they're out, they have clients in the park, that they are trained to know what the rules are in the park, and they're helping to enforce them. It's not perfect, but it's all I got to go with right now.
Yes.
To what extent were the fee increases intended not only to raise money, but to perhaps lower attendance at some of these parks, which, I guess some of them might be considered overcrowded? Was that part of the goal from Washington?
That's not part of the talking points that I've gotten from Washington. I think the net effect will be a decrease in visitation to the area. It will affect the park, it will affect the businesses around the area. There will be less people that can afford to come in to the park. But that is not what the secretary has said. But the effect is actually what you're talking about right now. We will see a decrease. Any other questions about fees? And I just want to say, I know that MDLT and NPCA are going to be hosting a public forum tomorrow night at the MDLT headquarters out on Highway 62 in the town of Joshua Tree, between Yucca Valley and Joshua Tree. And NPC is an advocacy group for the national parks, and they're going to really be talking about this fee increase and what it means for the area and what you can do as citizens. So it's not a park-funded thing. I will be there to answer any questions that come up as a result of that, but I would encourage you to take advantage of that opportunity as well. And Chris, you're going to be hosting that? Okay, so if you have any questions after that, grab onto him. I know Seth is going to be there as well. Grab onto him, and they'll answer your questions about that. Gosh, I thought people were going to be throwing tomatoes at me tonight. Come, Loretta.
If these fees, once we collect these fees and they're distributed to the park, what's the timetable for like the reconstruction of Black Rock Campground? Is that like, it's not going to happen next year, it'll be
God.
5 to 10 years? Could you give us a little time?
Have you ever
frame
worked for
on
the
that?
government, John?
No, I never have.
So, I mean, I had, when I got to this job, I had like big visions, like, wow, we've got a trailer down at Cottonwood that we've had for the last 15 years that is really awful for visitors. We've got an entrance station at West Entrance that, has traffic going down almost to Highway 62 that is just awful. Black Rock Campground, it looks like something that you'd see in, Mogadishu. I mean, it just looks, and there's nothing wrong with Mogadishu, but the point being that we've got a lot of major projects, trail projects inside the park that need to be repaired. The way that works is we put in for a project out of that fee money. It gets approved in Washington, and it's usually like 2 years out. But let's use the examples of Cottonwood. If we're going to do that, in order to follow through with planning and compliance, we got to go out there and have biologists look at the area and say, hey, there are no tortoises in this area, or if there are tortoises in this area, how are you going to mitigate that? We are compelled by compliance to meet with all 15 tribes, all 15 Native American tribes that have association with Joshua Tree, and consult with them before we move forward on anything in that area. Architectural plans have to be approved by Washington. I have to go back to Washington and get approval before we can actually build that. So it usually takes about 3 to 4 years for money to actually then be used for an infrastructure project. We are doing something kind of special this year, which is going to be a bit of a road nightmare. We are resurfacing all the roads in the park. We had some money last year. We made way more money than we planned to make, and we're having a really hard time getting approval to spend it quickly enough. Because if you don't spend it quickly enough, you lose it, and then you go down from an 80% park to a 60% park. So we came up with the repavement program as quickly as possible. So that'll begin, I think, in January.
Will that include Black Rock?
It includes every road surface in the park, but the roads in Black Rock are so awful that the resurfacing really can't work. At Black Rock, we have to pretty much grind up all those roads, repave it, redesign it, and the water flow coming out of Black Rock Canyon, really affects the folks that are downstream from the park. It, floods the area. So we got to do a lot of hydrological work there to divert that water so it doesn't damage the folks in Yucca Valley. Yes?
How long do you estimate the resurfacing will take? Because the spring flower season, if it's at the same time, it was so crowded last year.
It's going to take about 6 to 7 months. So it's going to be most of the spring and early summer to get that done, but it's through the entire park, and it'll be a section at a time. It's not going to be the whole park at the same time. So there'll be sections that'll be impacted. It'll be one-lane traffic in those areas. You're going to try to do as much night work as possible so that it does not affect visitors during the daytime. So that's, yeah, it will affect life at the park. Also, just another thing to think about, Southern California Edison is, they're running a new power line up to the top of Bell Mountain to replace the 50-year-old line that feeds the FAA station. I always get FFA and FAA, I got it right. FAA station on top of Bell Mountain. So that power line has to be replaced, and that's going to be a road project. They're going to put it in along the side of the road in 29 Palms going into the park. It's underground, but that means it'll be one-lane traffic on that road, and that begins this spring as well. And there's another road project, but that is the county. That's Park Boulevard coming in from 62. That'll be the third major road project going on at the same time. This is a good time to leave the state. Okay. Oh yeah, I hear you, sisters. We've 7 tortoises this year. I mean, it was just an awful, awful year.
I have a question. Highway 62 up Quail Springs, when are they doing that?
So the Quail Springs picnic area?
No, up the road from 62.
Oh, I think that's spring as well.
They're
Do we have
repaving.
anyone here from the county? No. So
They never tell us.
No, but as I recall, I was reading something from Mr. Ramos's office that was talking about spring is when the construction was supposed to happen.
And the other question is the park roads, are they being repaved or sealed?
They're being resurfaced. So you spray down.
Slurry seal type stuff?
Yeah, you spray down the tar, you put on the rocks on top of it, so it's not going to be chewing it up at all. Okay, so just to go over the fee changes, guys, for your letters, if you are going to be talking to the secretary, $30 for single entrance for someone who's walking in or on a bicycle, $50 for someone on a motorcycle, $70 for someone in a vehicle, and that's these are all 7-day passes. And then for the park pass, it'll be $75 for a year, and then I'm sorry, $80 for the America the Beautiful pass. And don't forget the Golden Age pass went up to $80 for your lifetime pass. I'm glad I used to be a fee ranger that I can discuss all these things.
So what is your estimated increase for CUA holders?
Okay, so the CUA holders is a totally different subject, but I'm happy to answer your question on that. So we also received a press release an hour after the other press release that said that the fees for CUA holders, so that's commercial use activity holders inside the park, the application fee, I believe, Judy helped me, it was supposed to double or triple to like $300. So $300. And then there's talks about the buses that would come into the park. There would be a new fee schedule based on that. So like the really big buses that are more than 55 people, I think it's like $1,000 a bus. And I'm really not prepped to talk so much about that. But that is at least 18 months out. And I'm not sure if there's a public comment period on that, but I would encourage you, once again, work with the Secretary's office. And also, something I didn't mention earlier, we live in a cool country. We've got 3 branches of government. We have a representative, who represents 3 really big national parks out in the West. So please contact your congressional representative, let him know if you've got any concerns. We've got 2 senators of the biggest state in the union, who are both very powerful senators. Share with them your feelings about these things, CUA and what it's going to do to you, if it's a positive thing or a negative thing, as well as your feelings about the fee increase. I forgot, I get to call people. Your hand was taller than Seth's, so.
I just wanted to say, David, that there is a link on the NPS website for CUA increase comments as well. But my question would be that there's only a 30-day comment period, and it appears that the secretary has already made the determination to move forward with the fees. So is the comment period simply a placation measure for the public, and the fees are going to go forward anyway, or are they going to make a decision based on the comments they receive from the public before enacting the fees January 1st?
So I'm a big proponent of representative democracies and democracies in general, and so I have to believe that, you know, your comments, you know, exert some pressure. I know that as administrations change over time, I've been doing this for 25 years, different administrations have different stakeholders. And this particular administration, if this is an issue of concern for you, you know, the businesses have a lot more say, you know. So we've got the Organic Act over here. So the Organic Act says that the purpose of national parks are basically, you know, to conserve, you know, the scenery, the wildlife, all the natural resources, and to promote visitors' enjoyment of those areas. And as administrations change, that mission gets stronger or gets watered down a little bit. And from reading the tea leaves that I've seen, you know, recently, you know, businesses have a big say in the economy and this administration. So you as a CUA holder, you know, work with your other CUA holders, work with your chambers of commerce to state what your feelings are. And that's probably a very effective tool you can use for communicating, you know, how this is going to affect your business. Seth.
Both for the recreational user that's getting this increased fee and for the CUA holders, which is a lot of us in this room here, I just want to bring it back full circle that Chris Clark has organized a meeting tomorrow night at the Mojave Desert Land Trust at 6:30, and I will be giving a presentation on some different game plan ideas that how we can deal with this as a community, both from a recreational tourism perspective and from a CUA holder perspective.
Great, and at MDLT, right?
MDLT.
Excellent. Young lady. The gaffer will bring you the mic.
So I know that although it wasn't the fee increase's initial intent wasn't to help with the visitation issue, and I know that it probably will help with the visitation issue because it's such a steep hike, but one of my main concerns is the fact that Joshua Tree National Park and a lot of the other parks that'll be affected are in the immediate vicinity of lots of marginalized communities that are already unable to really access the park as a resource because of the fees. And I think that the fee increase is probably going to alienate those communities more. And I'm wondering if there's been any information you've gotten about how that could be potentially mitigated.
So I haven't received any information at all, but I will tell you, you know, national parks belong to the United States. I believe that in all my heart. You know, our forefathers and mothers established these parks because they tell our story. You know, the Manzanar tells like one of the lowest points of history. You know, it's an important story. You know, Yosemite tells the story of, you know, those first African-American soldiers that came out, those Buffalo Soldiers that actually protected our public lands. You know, Americans love their parks. They belong to all Americans. And you're going to have civil servants out there, and you're going to have partners out there, and people that care about them that are going to find ways to guarantee that every American, every person, has the ability to access those parks. And maybe we're a little bit blessed at Joshua Tree in that we can have fee stations at Black Rock and Indian Cove and 49 Palms and Rattlesnake Canyon. You know, folks can access those without having to pay entrance into the park. You know, the Coxcomb Mountains, I wouldn't recommend all of you go out to the Coxcomb Mountains unless you've got it's just, they're challenging. They're challenging areas to go inside the park where you can go where there aren't any fees inside the park. We also don't maintain our entrance stations all the time. You know, you can go into the park when they're closed. So those might be some of the remedies. They're not perfect, but you know, with school groups, we're going to keep on looking for grants, to pay for buses to get kids into the park so that they can have an educational opportunity inside the park. And I'm going to do that. Meg, my gaffer, I don't know if you all know my gaffer, Meg Foley, the woman with the glasses there. She's been leading our association for the last 5 or 6 years. She's going to be retiring from that and moving on down to Big Morongo Canyon. But during her tenure, she has been a big advocate for taking all the money that we get from the bookstores and places like that and putting it into interpretation and paying for buses for kids to go into the park and artist in residence programs. So we've got partners out there that are really helping us. So not great answer, but that's my answer. Miss?
Okay, it says that there's the fee increases during peak season. What's the fees for off-peak?
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. So it's we've never done this in the agency before, but it'll be January through May. So that's the peak season for Joshua Tree, January through May. After May, it'll go back to $25 a car to go inside the park. $12 per motorcycle, $12 per person walking into the park.
Will there be a fee change then seasonally for CUA holders?
So like I said, I'm a little bit clueless on the CUA thing. I haven't really prepped on that, and the department, the agency haven't really given me information on that. Most of the CUA permits are year-long permits, so I fear it's going to be for the whole year.
It's also definitely worth mentioning again that this is a proposal right now, guys. This is not a done deal. This is a proposal, and us and all of the 17 national parks have a lot of power that I intend to help all of us take back.
Okay, please hold back your applause there, Mr. Loretic. Any other questions about the fees? And if you do have any, call me or stop by my office. I'll try to help you out. I'm learning more and more every day. I just talked to my boss in San Francisco, the regional director, and she doesn't know anything about it. This is really coming top down. It's really fast, and we're trying to learn as quickly as possible. Yes.
One last question. Yeah. With the fees, so you're telling me there's no contingency plan when there's an attrition rate of visitors coming to the park?
So remember that the reason that the secretary is doing this is he thinks it's going to bring in more money. And I'm hoping that figure, that $70 million figure, is based on the understanding that we're going to have a drop as well. So I don't have all the information, but that's the estimate.
Yes. And just to clarify, David, last thing, it's the public entrance fees, they go up January 1st, and commercial fee increases don't occur until January of 20.
I think it's 18 months out. I thought it was
Right.
later than that, so maybe a year. Well, I guess that's almost 18 months.
Right, okay,
Okay.
yeah, just to clarify.
Okay. So I'm going to then pass it off to my coworker, Karen Maceros. She's going to give you some input about the new transportation plan that we're talking about in the park. So this is the shuttle bus system that we've been hoping would happen. So Karen, take it away.
Thank you, David Smith.
Good evening. It's nice to see so many people from the community out tonight. Who has the Dodgers score? Anyone? Anyone? Wow. Okay. All right. Also joining me this evening to answer some of your questions is Mr. Matt Atkins. He's with the Morongo Basin Transit Authority, our primary partner in this endeavor. And so you can either come on up or you can sit in the back and wait. So a couple things. First of all, alternative transportation systems in the National Park Service are not new. Since we work for the government, we always have lots of documents to back up what we do. There's an economic benefits of transportation investment flyer. We have the alternative transportation systems partnerships flyer. We have the National Park Service National Transit Inventory and Performance Report 2014. So this is all background documentation of what we have put together here at Joshua Tree. Alternative funding opportunities for National Park Service Transit. So if you don't have anything to do tonight, let me know. You can borrow these. Okay, so at Joshua Tree National Park, click, we started to discuss an alternative transportation program with the former superintendent, Mark Butler. He came down from a career at Yosemite National Park, And he thought that we would be an ideal location to bring visitors into the park for different reasons. So we started to take a look at what we thought we could use a shuttle bus for. You'll see the pictures down below are overcrowding areas and capacity, as you all know, since you're all locals, I believe. You know that we have reached capacity. Our parking areas are full on weekends, our campgrounds are full most weekends, etc. The graph that is not really legible up on the screen starts in 1979 and goes through 2017, and you see all the way to the right how those numbers have significantly increased. But that's definitely not new to anybody in this room. Click. We reached out to the University of California at Irvine, and they completed a transportation study in 2014 for us. They had some engineering students come out, and they did some research and some surveys. And this slide, as you can read on your own, just mentions a few of the conclusions. I do want to point out the third bullet. Surveys showed 57% of visitors would regularly use a bus system if it were to be available. The last slide, we're also being environmentally friendly, or the last bullet, excuse me. A natural gas-powered bus system is what we have been offered from the MBTA. So that's when our partnership started with the MBTA, Click. So we went from determining the need and having the feasibility study done to planning for the shuttle bus. So since 2015, we've been working with Matt and the general manager, Mark Goodale, on putting together an agreement, identifying what we could do and what they could do. And these are some of the planning steps that we've taken. And it's not only going to bring people into the park. Once you're in the park, if you're here camping, the shuttle bus can pick you up at one of the campgrounds identified where we have a bus stop. It can take you into the community where you can purchase groceries and then go back to your campsite. And we do have a map up here of the shuttle route when we get to that. The contractors mentioned under the second bullet were the same contractors who helped develop the Yosemite National Park transportation plan. So they had a pretty good idea of what a template would look like or what a footprint could look like, and from there we grew the program. Click. The costs and the goals during our pilot season, MBTA is bringing $70,000 from local transit funds to the table and $5,500 in operating funds. And the Park Service, the Joshua Tree National Park, is contributing $229,800. The funding for the National Park Service portion is coming from our entrance fees and our campground fees that David had already mentioned. We put in a plan, we put in a project, and again, it has to go through the regional office and up to the Washington office for approval. So that money has been approved for this project, and we're moving forward. Let's see, I hit the second bullet. The third bullet, Otis College of Art and Design. Bex is here representing that college, and she brought some students out to the park. We spent some time with them, and they developed the logo and the color scheme for the buses. And it was an excellent partnership. The kids had a lot of good times coming out to the park. Some of them had never been out here before. Some of them, as I recall, it snowed when they were here. Maybe that was the UCI students.
No, but we got amazing winds and we were out in the park, so.
Okay. The kids had quite the experience. So through that partnership, Click, we have an MBTA bus with an Otis College of Art and Design, and this is what the final product is looking like. Matt told me tonight that the second bus has been delivered, and it has a very similar scheme to it, but it is a larger bus. So we will have a couple different size buses running the shuttle route. Click. Okay, this is a very basic map that we've put together. We've had a couple different iterations of a map, and we're still trying to finalize one. There are the transportation experts that know what they think a map should be like, and then we have the visitor experts in green and gray who think we know what the visitors need. Trying to find something that will work both through the transit industry and the National Park Service is it's challenging for us. So this is a very basic map that we've put up today. You could potentially start in Joshua Tree, park your car somewhere in downtown, hop on that bus, go up to the Boy Scout trailhead and do your overnight. Return back to Boy Scout trailhead the next day and take the bus back to your vehicle. You could start in 29 Palms, ride in, and then do a couple hikes. You could go to Barker Dam, you could hit Hidden Valley and do the nature hike there. You can have a picnic, hop back on the bus, and then go back out to 29 Palms. If you own a 32-foot RV and you're parked in Jumbo Rocks Campground, you can leave your RV there, as I mentioned, head out to Stater Brothers, get your groceries, and go on back to the campground. So that's the idea that we have in mind right now. What we're doing at this point in time is, since we have the route, the basic route up, and this is on the comment website, on the business cards that we had mentioned. If you go to that website, this map is there available for your comments. What we have going right now is we're working on a media and communications plan. If you go into the park, if you haven't been in the park in the last 2 weeks and you go in the next couple weeks, you'll see that some of the curbs have been painted red. That's not only where the buses will be stopping, where the bus stops are. We're putting benches down there, but those red curb areas are also to prevent parking in the busier trailhead lots so that the bus can make safe passage into that area. Because we do get a lot of folks who like to park along the curb line there, and we need that area wide open for the larger buses. We're putting benches at the bus stops, and we will have shuttle bus signs at the bus stops with the specific schedule for that specific bus stop. So the link in from Joshua Tree and the link in from 29 Palms, those buses will run every 2 hours. And then the buses running internally, you should have no longer than a 30-minute wait at those locations. And that's what I have for information tonight, and we're both available for questions. And if you have a really hard question, David has not left the room. And just a reminder, we have the microphone going around because this is being recorded. It's not just so everybody in the room can hear, but it's fed into the system. So please wait for the microphone.
Hi, Karen. How are you?
Here.
So I've been thinking a lot about this over the years, just because thinking about things is what I do. And so I have a kind of a couple of questions, so I do apologize. My first being, how many buses do you plan to have in service at any one time in the park?
There's going to be 4 buses, 2 entering from the Joshua Tree entrance and 2 entering from the 29 gateway.
Okay, so four buses total.
4 buses
2
total.
running from each community.
Correct.
Understanding that this is the goal of this is to alleviate wait times getting into the park, how do you propose to do that when the shuttle bus is going to sit in the same line of traffic that everybody else sits in?
We know that we're going to have a learning curve, but the intent, Judy manages the fee collectors. The intent is 10 minutes prior to the bus arriving, the fee collectors will clear that traffic out, similar to what they could do now. They allow the traffic to get through so the bus doesn't have to wait. So if we know, and we do know, that the schedule says a bus is going to leave at 8 a.m. from the Joshua Tree Visitor Center, at 10 till 8 or 5 till 8, they'll clear that lane, so by the time the bus gets up to the entrance station, the line should be clear, or there will be a minimal wait.
Okay. I had a couple. Really quick, just because my biggest thing that I look at is how are you guys going to maintain accountability of who goes into the park with what if they miss a bus, and more importantly, what are the fees going to be, since fees are going to become a very important thing in the very near future?
Okay, personal accountability is something that we try to educate our visitors with on a number of fronts, whether it's backcountry camping, taking a 4-wheel drive vehicle down through Purdue Canyon or Pinkham Canyon. You are responsible for knowing where you're going, how long you're going to be hiking, and when that last bus is. So we are not going to be accountable, just like we don't track people now. We would hope that people are going to take that personal responsibility. The bus drivers are going to be saying the last bus today from this location is. So people will hear it, but they will also, we're having a rider's guide printed, and that will have the schedule on it. And again, the signs at each trail location where we drop you off will have the schedule on it as well. And the second portion, as far as the price of the bus, the fees, people will be expected to have their park pass in hand. It is a pilot year. We're hoping for a fairly low expectation of 1% ridership, and maintaining accountability for who has a park pass and who doesn't have a park pass is not an issue at this point.
So during the pilot, we've received permission. We don't have to collect fees on the bus. So this is a great way to allow folks in the gateway communities who can't afford to get into the park to actually be able to enter the park. You know, technically, if you're inside the park, anywhere inside the park, you've got to have an entrance pass. Realistically, there's no expectation that someone coming on a bus is going to have one in their possession. So at least during the 2-year pilot period that we've been allowed to do this, we are not going to be enforcing the holding of a pass. Does that answer your question? No, it's... No, there'll be no entrance fees. So the bus drivers will not be collecting fees on those routes for the Roadrunner bus. So if you get on at Stater Brothers and you get on this bus, you're fine. If you get on bus number 1 or route number 1 or something like that, you're going to pay. But if you get on the Roadrunner bus, the National Park Service bus through MBTA, you're not going to be charged a fee on the bus or to get into the park or to exit the park. And also, just Mark has worked really hard to schedule the buses. The expectation is, you know, they will be at Ryan Mountain Trailhead at 8:40 a.m. You know, so whatever it's posted there on the sign, you know, you can expect that that bus is going to be there. That means that at the entrance station, we have got to move traffic through the entrance station and make sure it's open so that bus gets in there so it doesn't affect the time schedule inside the park. Go ahead, Brian. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm not entirely clear on how these fees are going to work. So there's no fee to get on the bus anywhere. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you're not going to have a park pass to get on the bus.
Correct. So technically,
So people riding the bus can get on for free and get into the park and use it for free. And some 2 people driving in are going to have to pay $70.
you're absolutely right.
And if you do get around to charging people fees on the bus, say they have to have a park pass to get on the bus or something in the future, a family of 4 is going to have to buy 4 individual passes at $30 a piece instead of $70 for the car.
No. You'd like me to? Yes, I'll give you more details. So it would be a family. So a family that's traveling together, just like they are inside their car, a family traveling together would be charged the family fee. Do you understand?
Well, I understand what you're saying, but how do you know?
So if a family comes together and they have the golden, the America the Beautiful pass, if they have if we do move to a $70 fee, if they have that pass, you know, that's going to be that family. So I guess conceivably, if people do want to get around that and they want to get together with a bunch of friends and call themselves a family, you know, that would be a way to do it as well. So just like we do, you know, a carload of people is a family traveling together. A family who's coming to the park together would still be that fee. This is a work in progress.
I understand.
We may have some hurdles and we may have to read it. If we have like 22 people coming together, you know, taking up the entire bus, and we do decide that we're going to start charging, yeah, we probably will have to rethink that. But for the pilot years, these first 2 years, to see if this bus system is even going to work, we're not going to be charging people to get on the bus, and we're going to see how it goes.
So, I'm sorry, so the bus is going to be free with no admission fees, and people that use the park for commercial uses are going to have an increase in their fees for almost 2 years.
So if you are a commercial bus group entering...
Not necessarily the bus group, but anybody that uses...
Anyone who's driving in their own personal vehicle, if this fee increase comes to pass January 1st, we are going to be enforcing that because that's the directions we've received from Washington. We've been able to fund this program out of fee dollars as a pilot demonstration to alleviate traffic inside the park, to decrease pollution inside the park, and to increase visitor enjoyment inside of the park. And based on those three things, we're able to waive the fees during the pilot phase of this program. No problem. The gaffer says it goes to Brian.
One more question. I noticed peak times, the visitor center in Joshua Tree's parking lot's full. So if this does work, this is going to impact businesses down in Joshua Tree for the community not to have a parking place.
So the capacity for the buses is how much?
18 to 22, depending on which bus.
Okay, but they can stand as well. So maximum maybe 30 to 40 people on a bus would be kind of crowded. You get to know each other really well. We've got 6 buses a day coming out of Joshua Tree, 6 coming out of 6? I think six a day coming out of 29 Palms. So you're looking at a potential of maybe 30 to 40 cars increased in downtown Joshua Tree. Coyote Corner has volunteered to let us use the dirt lot that's directly across the street from the visitor center as a parking lot for this pilot period to see if that works or not. We're looking at other properties in Joshua Tree that might serve that purpose as well, but we will sign that as the parking area for the time being.
Is there room on the bus for crash pads and bicycles?
Every vehicle is equipped with a bicycle rack. They will hold 2 bicycles each, and that'll be on a first come, first serve. And I'm not familiar with this second piece that you asked of.
Big mattress for climbing?
There is an area in the back designated really for mobility devices. And if that area is free, then there would be a spot back there to store extra gear.
Along the same question, will there be cargo or storage area for people's groceries? 5-gallon jugs of water if they're going to Stater Brothers, along with 30 people inside that bus? Is there backpacks?
That would be the same standard that you would see on our regular transit buses. On the floor, under the seat, just having the passenger keep a handle on them.
So it's a pilot phase for us to discover what is going to work and what's not going to work. And if we need to get bigger buses, 2 years from now,
We may get bigger buses. So it'll be a very exciting time. If people start bringing wildlife onto the bus and goats and chickens, that could also, change our visitation patterns. My scientist over here is terrified that we're going to bring chickens and goats into the park. We are not going to bring chickens and goats into the park, I promise.
And I just want to add, David did mention that it's a pilot project. When this project is successful, Otis, again, the College of Art and Design, they have sketched out buses that we could potentially have built for us with racks on the back. So that was, we've already looked at that for in the future to have the crash pads on the back, backpacks in that rack, as well as the bicycle racks on the front. So there's a period at the end of that sentence. Since I have the microphone from David for a moment, I just wanted to point out the signs that we'll be using. The Roadrunner shuttle bus sign is reflective. That you will see in the park at all the trailhead locations where there are bus stops. You will also see that downtown at the bus stops where the MBTA buses will be stopping, and they'll be adjacent to the MBTA sign as well. So these are the 2 signs you'll see out in the community. The green and white sign is what you will see inside the park at the trailheads. I believe it's reflective.
Thank you. I have a question about the loop times. You've mentioned the 2-hour run time for the bus. Could you walk me through the bus from Joshua Tree, what stops it would make, and when it turns around and goes back to Joshua Tree, that 2-hour?
Okay, basically, the route that's on the far left of the screen is the Joshua Tree entrance. Oh, there you got a pointer. So the bus will enter there, and it'll run every 2 hours entering into the park. The first stop is going to be the Boy Scout Trailhead, and then it'll continue on into the main portion of the park, Hidden Valley, Intersection Rock, Barker Dam area. Once it reaches that point and you can see the route changes to that blue color, that's the interior loop is what we're calling it. So the bus will come in, it'll do 2 loops of that interior loop, and then it'll exit back out the same way that it came in. And we'll have 2 buses on that end doing the same thing, and in 29 they'll come in on the green route, run 2 loops of that blue route in the middle, and then head back out on into 29 Palms. That way we don't have a bus, I don't want to say stuck or trapped in the middle, but that way it's built into the schedule so it can exit for fuel and driver accommodations and necessities and things. So they'll each come in, do 2 loops of the interior, and then exit back out the same way they came back in.
And so that's going to be a 2-hour time frame, right? That's what you're thinking?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you.
But just to clarify, in the middle of the park.
Let's use the microphone, please.
Go back to the air marshal service. In the middle of the park where the blue line is, those are every 30 minutes. So, and there'll be portions where it'll be, the Barker Dam area, like every 15 minutes, where a couple stops where you actually be able to get it. But that'll be posted on every single sign where the bus stops are, so you know exactly that if you're there at 12:27, that's when the bus will be there to pick you up, so that the visitor can really plan out their trip better, provided they have a watch. Do you have a watch? You're gonna mess up.
Awesome. Karen, could you hold up that logo again? That logo is awesome. The one on the left is really, really well done, whoever did that.
I just want to say for my students, they worked incredibly hard in a very intense 1-week workshop to pull this all together and put together an identity for the shuttle. Yes, and so these were all college juniors based in Los Angeles. Some of them were international students, some of them were inner city Los Angeles students, and this was all a monumental group effort, and they loved being here. The 3 stars represent the 3 communities on our northern border, so Yucca Valley, Joshua Tree, and 29, and yeah, it's the Roadrunner. We hope that that's what everyone will start calling it, and we wanted to design something that we thought really fit into the character of the park, but that also worked for the character of the different communities around the park. So it seems kind of simple, but actually a huge amount of thought went into all of that. So thank you so much for calling it out.
Good work with that. It's a really nice one. Secondly, I want to say I'm definitely a proponent of this. Anything we can do to decrease vehicle traffic in the park is huge. My biggest concern, quite frankly, with this is environmental concerns. People carrying enough water and warm clothing, and I heard you say we're going to educate the public. I think we're going to need to be like pretty close to militant when it comes to educating the public, because if somebody comes into the park with a little shot glass of water, like most tourists carry, and a t-shirt on, and they miss one single bus stop that puts them out of that 2-hour loop, JOSAR is going to be dealing with that nonstop.
So Seth, we currently are staffing law enforcement till to 10 and midnight every night. So Ellie will do a pass-through just to all the bus stops, I don't know, 8:30 or 9.
Extra water and warm clothing in their vehicles.
Well, they've all got MREs and clothing and water in all their vehicles for all of other visitors right now. No. But like I said, Seth, it's a pilot, and so just realize we will figure this out. What's going to be working best. Our communication team is going to be working hard inside those buses. What are those messages we have to get out? So wintertime, when it's snowy and cold, the messages are going to be, vapor barriers, heavy clothing, layers, all the things you need. In the summertime, it's going to be heavy water, water, water. We will figure that out.
It needs to be before they get in the bus, though, David.
Right. So at the bus stops, at the visitor centers, in our newspapers, on the internet, You know, and we're gonna hammer people with communication beginning probably this next month, getting them ready for this bus system.
And also, part of the pilot project, Jane was already mentioned back there as our lead scientist, but we're already taking photo point shots of the trailheads to see if we end up with a bus full of 25 people, they all get off at the same trailhead, how much vegetation damage we might be incurring as a result of this, looking at some of the bouldering piles that are closer to the trailheads. And so we are going to be doing some environmental management and measurement through our management. So that's already underway, taking photo points now. We'll take photo points again before the bus starts, and then we'll be taking photo points throughout the busy season.
Based on experiences that friends have had when they've been traveling nationally and internationally, and many, many stories I've heard, if people are going to be parking their cars and going into the park for half day, full day, is there any talk or consideration of the possibility of any kind of security or something? Because I've had more than a few friends, you know, all of their gear is in their car. They're 700 miles or 7,000 miles from home. They take a 5-hour tour and they come back and everything's gone.
You know, not yet, to be honest with you.
So we're going to have to figure this out. You know, if we have to work with, you know, Ethan to talk about, you know, putting security there, you know, that's something we're going to look into. I hear what you're saying. We don't have a lot of car clouding occurring at the visitor center in Joshua Tree. We don't have a lot of car clouding happening in 29 Palms either. I'm sure it happens in other areas inside both of the towns, but it's not happening right now. And sometimes people do leave their cars there all day. You know, May can attest to it. A lot of her spots get, you know, folks drop their car off there because they don't want to pay, you know, for 2 admissions, and those cars stay there all day, and we're not having problems yet.
Hi, thanks so much for you guys for coming and taking your time here. This is an amazing thing. When we think about you and Joshua Tree, you're thinking about the things that are here locally. And we began with this federal thing that's coming in about raising fees so that we can do maintenance where we're behind in the dollars in that to be able to resurface our roads and those kind of things. But this service, the bus service, have you done any kind of statistical analysis as to how it's going to alleviate some of the parking and the use of the roads and maybe alleviate some of the cost of us having to do maintenance?
So we're trying to figure out if this is actually going to be successful at all. So it sounds pretty pathetic, but we're looking for 1% ridership this year. We're looking for 30,000 people to get on the bus. You know, if that works out well, you know, then we can expand the system. We can take more money from fees and get more buses running there as well. So, you know, we're looking, you know, a lot of our visitors that come up are, you know, 2 people in a car, you know. So if we can get, you know, an additional 150 cars off the road a day, you're right, it's less wear and tear on the road. Considering that we have sometimes 30,000 people in the park on a given day, you know, that's a small portion of what's going to happen. But, you know, you gotta take a bite out of that elephant one bite at a time. And I'm not a big fan of eating elephants, but it's an expression. So, you know, if we take a little bite out of, you know, protecting the infrastructure, a little bite out of taking care of the environment, you know, down the line 5 years from now, maybe it's a big bite, you know. So that's what we're hoping.
Really quick, I support it. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a good concept, and it's good to see you guys trying new initiatives to help keep the impact on the park down. My last 2 questions, have you attempted your route on busy days in the park as of yet and hit your timelines?
We have done some preliminary testing of the routes, even though now is the time to probably get out there again since it's hitting the busy time of the season. But we have done some preliminary testing on a couple of different occasions, and we did hit a little delay at a gate because some of the traffic was still backed up, and we didn't have that communication ahead to the gate to open it up. But that seemed to be the only thing that held the routes back was that initial congestion at the gate.
Okay, and then the other thing is Dave, I know this is a pilot, so I get that, but do you think you're getting an adequate enough sample? Since what we're talking about here, each bus trip is removing about 10 to 15 cars from entering the park each 2-hour cycle? Do you think it's a big enough sample?
Well, so remember the bus that's moving in the middle every 30 minutes. You know, my goal is that the 120 sites that we have at Jumbo, yeah, so they are, you're keeping your car there. You know, the 40 sites we have at Ryan, the 50 sites we have at Hidden Valley, you know, you're keeping your vehicles there. And those are the folks that, you know, help aid in the congestion in some of those areas. You're not parking at Ryan Mountain Trailhead then. You know, if you're staying at Hidden Valley and you want to go to the top of Ryan, you leave your car at Hidden Valley, you get on the bus and you go over there and you do it. You know, so it's more than just those 12 buses that will be coming in from the two communities collectively. It's the 48 times that the bus is going around in the middle of the park.
Hi, sorry, I did come in late and I grossly apologize for that, and I sure hope I'm not repeating anything at the moment. And this probably does sound like a somewhat selfish question, but you know, there's a lot of states in the country where there's a rule where if there's 5 cars following behind you, you've got to legally pull over and let everyone pass you. And I'm just wondering if this slow bus, you know, if you get on them right behind at the beginning of downtown Joshua Tree, do you guys have some kind of protocol for pulling over? Because there really isn't anywhere good to pull over. Soft sand, a lot of places and stuff like that. Apologize for the somewhat selfish question there, but that could take people an extra like 20 minutes to drive, you know, potentially in to pass the bus on their first stopping spot there.
Correct, yes. We have run the route with the buses, and the little bit of a hill, I mean, it is doable with the slower speed limits that are set.
Well, it is a 55 mile per hour speed limit.
Correct. But not all the way up to
No,
there.
but, well, getting to the park,
So
which is a
we have
long
not
way.
we have not yet had a problem with our buses
Okay.
becoming that much of a slow issue.
Okay.
And then once inside the park with the speed limits set the way they are,
Yeah.
that's not going to be much of an
You
issue at all.
don't think it'll be a problem? Okay, great,
not
thank
at
you.
all.
And you're not at all concerned about the 40 rental RVs?
Yes,
Germans
that's
that
exactly
are
why I
like
asked that
8 miles an hour right now.
Sometimes it takes time, sometimes I'm 20 minutes late, or more, literally, because of that. That's exactly why I asked that question, yeah.
Yeah, and the drivers will be focused on the road, not on the beautiful sights out the window.
Well, that's a good thing for sure.
Yes.
A few questions, Karen. Is the bus going to be year-round?
The pilot season right now is February 1 through April 30. We've had many different timetables put together. As I said earlier, we've been working on this for a couple of years. We thought we were going to start in 2016, then we thought we were going to start in 2017. So we were going to do a fall run and then a spring run. We were going to do just a spring run, but at this point in time, because we finally have all our approvals lined up, and all the stars are aligning at this point, right now it's February 1 through April 30. We might be able to run it through May. That remains to be seen, and then we're going to reevaluate and see what changes we have to make for the fall of 2018 and see how things go, and then from there we'll make a determination. We've not ever talked about it going year-round at this point in time.
Okay, well, that kind of leads into the other question. I was just wondering on seasonal hours. I know right now it's just 8 to 8. Is it going to just stay that? But I guess if it's only February 1st through April 30th, that would seem
We
fine.
actually, Matt built a schedule to take into the 2 different time seasons, but at this point we are just doing February to April, and I just lost my train of thought. Do you remember the hours specifically?
It would be about 8 to 8 at this point. During the shorter daylight hours, then the service would be reduced from 8 to about 5. Because I know the park was concerned about having the buses run after the sun had gone down and it starts to get a little dark. So during that shorter daylight time, the bus service schedule would also be reduced to accommodate the lighting.
My question is are there any plans to modify interpretive plan schedules to accommodate the bus schedule?
Yes, we'll be taking a look at that. We had a project in for additional help, and that has not been approved at this point in time, but we hope to have people on the buses to respond to visitor questions, as well as working with your supervisor, a few chains up, and modifying program schedules, evening programs, things like that.
Cool, thank you.
What we'd really like to do is hire local youth. So, hire high school kids and college kids, as GS 1, 2s, and 3s to be on those buses and be transportation ambassadors. So they would actually have a script that they would use, and they develop interpretive skills eventually, so that we could do education aboard the buses as well. So that's the goal. Since we didn't get this project approved, we're going to kind of wing it this spring. You may see the superintendent giving an interpretive program on the bus, so we can get his bottom out of the office for a while and actually do something. So that's what we're going to try. We just put in an AmeriCorps grant for this spring, beginning in February, and so we probably have some of the AmeriCorps interns doing the bus tours as well.
Any other questions regarding the shuttle bus?
Kelly, certainly you have 3 or 4 more questions.
Okay, yes, David, it's all yours now.
Oh, cool.
Thank you, Matt, for being here.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're in the final stretch right now. Does anyone need to stretch? You can stand up and stretch right now. You young people, are you all right? Okay, just take 10 seconds. Just get up. So is this a high school project? Because I notice you're all taking really good notes. Okay. So the final thing we wanted to talk about tonight was the proposal to begin doing some more reservations inside the park for some of our campgrounds. Like I mentioned earlier, before you arrived late, but before what I mentioned earlier is a lot of the management that happens in this park comes from you all, and the feedback I get from you. There are 12 letters on my desk right now that need to be answered from visitors that have come into the park, that have made suggestions, from locals and things like that. And one of the consistent things that has been happening since I took this job was, why don't you have more reservation sites inside this park? It's very unfair. I am driving from far away. I can't plan. I get there, and then I'm illegally camping inside the park somewhere, or there's no hotels, and I'm camping in Stater Brothers parking lot or at Walmart in Yucca Valley. Why are you doing this to me? So we've run this back and forth on our management team for a number of years, and we heard loudly from the climbing community last year that the idea of doing a reservation system would really, really affect folks that use Hidden Valley. It has a certain culture that's developed, a climbing culture, a camping culture, not quite like Camp 4, but there is that kind of a spirit to it. So we thought we would try an initial reservation system using Jumbo Rocks. So that's the 124 sites in the middle of the park, as well as Cottonwood. And you're going to say, well, Cottonwood, that's the last place that ever fills up. What's nice about Cottonwood is it's a great place for RVs. And RVs take up a lot of space, and they have a big effect on some of the smaller campgrounds inside the park. So if you are planning your trip, you're a German visitor who's coming over to the United States, and you're in your rental, Winnebago, to be able to actually plan out your trip and reserve a spot down at Cottonwood frees up the spot at Bell Campground or Ryan Campground. So the 62 sites down at Cottonwood would allow us the freedom to do that as well. And on a night where everything is full in the upper portion of the park, if we can redistribute another 40 or 50 cars or RVs down to Cottonwood, our hope is that that would allow for greater camping opportunities both for locals and for other people that are going to use the first come, first serve sites. I just want to go through a little bit of what we've got right now. Jane, could you move it forward one? So this is a graph that shows you had a kind of a pointer, but I can use my fingers. Thank you, miss. This little button, roger that. Okay, so this is right over here, it's 1980. And the green line are the number of tent campers per year that are inside the park. So in 1980, you got about 50,000 tent campers inside the park. And this kind of steadily goes up, 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 up. So now we have about 250,000 tent camper sites being used each year inside the park. The RV one is, I think it's this purple one right here. No, I'm sorry, it's the yellow one. This is the RV one. It kind of went down, but now it's beginning to catch back up. But overall, we're looking right now at about close to, almost 500,000 campers, inside the park during any given year. So we're seeing a huge increase in the number and demand for campsites. I can't tell you how frustrating it is for me as a park manager to have folks, call me. And when Patty's not here tonight. Did she leave? There's Patty. Okay, there's Patty. When Patty's gone for the day and I'm still working there in the office and I'm getting phone calls from people driving in saying, where can I camp that night inside the park? And I got to tell them, go to the dry lake bed out past, Joshua Tree. Drive out along Highway 62. All the RV campsites are full, in 29 Palms. So I feel the pain for a lot of folks that are coming to this area because they want a place to camp. They want to have an experience inside a Joshua Tree, but we can't provide that experience. As you can see from my planning process, it takes us a long time to build more campgrounds inside the park. And maybe that's not the best thing to do for when we're also mandated to preserve this national park. We are looking at, in the next 5 years, of having a campsite across from Sheep Pass. That would be a nice RV place we could put in there. We could concentrate RVs. We might be able to use it just for school groups because we have a lot of demand for school groups to come inside the park. But on the horizon, that might be one of the only things we're going to do, other than potentially putting in another loop down at Cottonwood, because of the initial planning for Cottonwood allowed for another 1 to 2 loops down there. But the rest of the park, there's just not a lot of places you can put camping without having to build a lot of infrastructure that's going to adversely affect the environment that I'm also supposed to protect. So remember the Organic Act I looked at earlier? I've got to allow for visitor enjoyment and also preserve it for the next generation. So that's the kind of battle all times I'm looking at. So how do we manage our campgrounds? Could you move to the next one, please, Jane? So the purpose of this is to improve the experience for visitors. If you're coming out to Joshua Tree from Long Beach and you want to camp and you know that there's only about 100 sites that are in the park that are first come, first serve, maybe you're going to rethink your visitation pattern. Maybe you're going to call Lake Joshua Tree and camp out there instead, and then come into the park for the day. Decrease the number of overflow campers, which result in illegal camping inside the park. If you come into the park on a Saturday morning, you're going to see about 25 cars that have driven off the road into various areas around the park so they can illegally camp, which causes resource damage. Now, I can solve part of that with really effective law enforcement inside the park. But I'd like to get the message out to the public before they arrive that that's not allowed. And also, there's really no place to camp inside the park on the weekends unless you've made a reservation or you come up a little bit early. Don't expect to come from San Diego on a Friday night over Thanksgiving to find a campsite inside the park. We'd like to make better use of the available camping that we have inside the park. So like diverting some folks down to Cottonwood when that campsite is empty. And that's a good place to camp because it's paved, it's got water down there, it's got flush toilets. The impact on the environment down there is considerably less than it's going to be at some of the other places that get hammered. And then also better placement for RVs and tent campers, getting more RVs to go down there as well to free it up from Bell and places like that. Next one, Jane. So right now we've got 9 campgrounds with 450 family sites, 22 group sites that are there. Reservations are currently necessary for all the group sites in the park as well as Indian Cove and Black Rock. Next. So we are proposing that we would actually do reservable sites in Jumbo Rocks and Cottonwood, which would increase the total in the park from currently 225 reservable family sites to 386 reservable family sites. Next. So just to give you an idea, this is Black Rock. It has about 100 sites, fills up most of the season that we have, especially on the weekends. Next. Cottonwood has 62 sites. It has 2 loops. We're looking at potential for expansion down there of 1 to 2 more loops as well. but that's really pretty far off in the future realistically. If we're going to pay for the visitor center and west entrance and maybe Black Rock, this is pretty far in the future. But if we can divert more folks down there, it's better for the rest of the park. Click. This is up at Indian Cove, where we've got, I think, 101 sites there, and that's all reservable. Click. Now, first come, first served sites that we have in the park up at Bell, that's 18 sites. One of my favorite campgrounds, by the way, is Bell. I love to camp at Bell, and you can climb on that rock in the middle, and it's totally fun. No one ever climbs there. And then the other one down in the bottom-hand corner was White Tank, which has about, I think, 16 sites down there. Next one. This is a picture of Ryan. Ryan's got about 30 sites or so. Sadly, my notes are down below on the wood, so I can't see what the numbers are. And there's a picture of Hidden Valley at night, the great metropolis of Hidden Valley. That's a really cool photo, by the way, which has, I think, about 40 sites or so. So click. So that's what we're thinking about right now. Young lady in the back, I saw your hand jut up really quickly.
Please, Mayor, thank you. We have some kind of, I can talk loud enough. There's no punishment for the people that don't cancel their sites online. So when they go and they get their.
Man, I am totally with you right now.
Please make it
So,
like it hurts if they don't show up.
so,
At least open it up for
so what we're thinking, is, there's, we're gonna put a time. This is an evolving thing. We got to figure out how to make this work better. First, we need staff that's actually going to hold people accountable for these things. So we've got. It's recreation.gov, but we've got to establish, a ranger going around there. You've not occupied your site by 10 o'clock. You lose that.
I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
what about when they make the reservation? If you don't show up, you have a hefty fee that you're gonna pay for not showing.
Even better, you can't reserve a site for another year. That's my kind of draconian thing. So if you don't show up, you lose the right to make a reservation again. Well, so what we do now at Indian Cove and Black Rock, when people don't show up, they lose their reservation, and then we redistribute those to people that drive up, because still people are driving up at those locations. So we're pretty good about filling Indian Cove and Black Rock. Am I right, Judy? Because I live right next to the Indian Cove Ranger Station. Those poor rangers hate me because I stop by almost every day to see how they're doing. And they tell me that when people don't show up, they pull the tickets and sell them.
I'm sorry, David, I'm sorry, but the thing is that we have Boy Scouts and groups that try to plan way in advance. And if people have a hefty, it's gonna hurt you if you don't let us know that you don't want that site. If they could do it 3 weeks in advance and people would be able to get the site. Now we go to Indian Cove and we see group sites that are wide open.
So you're writing all this down? Okay. So draconian punishments for people that fail to live up to that. I am with you, and it's good to hear you saying it because it's something I feel strongly about too. I get really upset when I've just spent all this time talking to people that can't get a campsite and someone has reserved it and not used it. I hear you.
Thanks.
Yes.
Thank you. Is this a pilot program?
Yeah. So we're experimenting right now. I'm not gonna call pilot. I'm gonna say this is an experimental program.
If it goes well, where do you want to see this going? Everything to reservation or?
Well, I don't know. To be honest with you. So right now, if you're camping at Jumbo Rocks all night long, you have a steady flow of people driving around the campground coming to you and saying, hey, can I camp with you? Hey, can I pull my
Sure.
car there? And
Yeah.
you wake up in the morning and she's showing up with her family and they're
Yep.
camping right there next to you. So it's a nightmare. But if you get up there and it's reservation only, ideally 90% of those cars stop. That's our goal. So I don't know. If Hidden Valley starts having the same problem, and I start getting lots of complaints from folks that are Hidden Valley, I'm gonna take that to our management team and say, hey guys, what do you think about this? And take it to you all as well.
Cool. And I apologize if my persona was intense there. I'm not against this at all. Just
Oh my God, you were
curious.
so far from intense, man. I got
Okay,
you.
man. One more question. What about the secret camping at Lost Horse Ranger Station?
The secret camping at Lost Horse Ranger Station.
Well, it's not secret now.
Yes, it's out there. So we have an
Blame me.
We have an administrative site that's behind Lost Horse Ranger Station. We primarily use that for Desert Institute to run classes there. So Desert Institute is our partner that does educational classes for adults mostly. They give a higher level of education than we can give in the park. And we use it for JOSAR for practicing, so they're there every week. And we also use it for like emergency kid groups that we have. There's school groups that come out there. We can't stick them anywhere else. We've got the place across from Sheep Pass, which is a borrow pit. It's basically where we used to put sewage and things like that in the park, 40 years ago. We have kids camping out there because it's the only place we have for them to go inside the park right now. So that's primarily what Lost Horse is used for. We also allow staff, if there is availability, ahead of time, to grab onto that spot. Or no, we just divided it into 2 spots now. So there's 2 spots there that we use sometimes for staff, so they get a chance to camp inside the park.
So you keep that one?
We're going to keep that one. It's not practical to make that into a commercial campsite.
Sure, okay, no problem.
Because there's just not space there to have where it would make sense where you could have 40 or 30 spots there.
Gotcha. Thank you.
But it's not some kind of draconian, or not draconian, it's not like a secret thing that we're trying to do.
Oh, no, I use that word secret, but...
But I will, since you brought up Lost Horse,
administrative is probably better, yeah.
So what we've done recently is, we're looking at Lost Horse to use that for law enforcement and actually have a ranger who lives out there full time. So we're getting that kind of set up to once again become a ranger station that's actually useful, so we can have someone respond to Hidden Valley without having to get them from 29 Palms in the middle of the night or from Cottonwood in the middle of the night. So we have better response time.
Excellent, thank you.
Well, I might get shot for saying this in climbing circles, but I'm actually pro reservations in all the campsites. The last few times I've hung out in Hidden Valley, it's a nightmare, man. You're sitting in a campsite and it is nonstop people driving by a campsite asking when you're leaving, if they can share a site with you. Honestly, in my perfect world, obviously, I'd like to see some more campgrounds built. That's not going to happen. But I think a compromise for that might be a Camp 4 setup where most of Hidden Valley is reservations. And then there's a section where you just put people in right on top of each other. It is dirtbag, nasty Rama. And that is first come, first serve. But Hidden Valley, as far as I'm concerned, from a cultural perspective, from a climbing perspective, the constant influx of people looking for campsites, it ruins it at this juncture. And I'm embarrassed to say that as a climber, because I've spent as many nights as a lot of people here have in Hidden Valley. And man, I had some special moments in my life in that place. Yeah, Halloween, man, like 99, woo!
So some of our ways of dealing with Hidden Valley, this is not going to be great, but we have found that our accountability for people that pay there is about 20 to 30%. So we're going to turn that around and, have a fee ranger go up there every day, count out the envelopes, and then hold people accountable for not paying.
It's not about paying, David.
No, I understand, but there's the dirtbag component that you brought up so well, who are thrilled.
You're going to put the irons down on.
We're going to do a little bit of the irons in the sense that you cannot not pay. It's just not fair to everyone else.
I'm all for them paying. Would you please train your staff in such a way, or prep them to deal with that dirtbag climbing culture in such a way that it doesn't create an antagonistic relationship between the LEs and the climbing community? Can we preload that really well?
Yeah, I think it's preloaded. I got a really smart chief ranger who coaches her people on that stuff. And I don't want to go where Joshua Tree Law Enforcement was when Loretta came here. And he made it so terrible. No. I want it to be this partnership. I want the Bernadettes of the world out there.
Maybe you could get Keith Loper back out of retirement, bring him in.
Okay, this is so let's move on from that topic. I hear you. Okay.
So I work at Black Rock, and we have a wonderful fee ranger, Janet, there, who manages the fees and is able to do all the cancellations, who will be managing Jumbo Rocks, since that's inside the park.
Good question. It's hard to get someone to live at Jumbo Rocks because we don't have water there, or sewage, or hookups, or anything like that. So we've got a campground host that we are going to either keep in 29 Palms, or we're going to keep them at Indian Cove, who will be responsible for every day going up there and pulling all the tags,
putting down the new tags, and then going up there during the day to check out on accountability. So primarily it's going to be through volunteers during the peak season that are going to be responsible for doing that. But we just hired a new fee ranger, and so his job is also going to be to focus on the 2 reservation sites. And then at Cottonwood, it's a piece of cake because we've already got a ranger down there and campground hosts that can get accountability.
So your buses are going to cause more renegade camping in Hidden Valley because the way your system works, being a climber and knowing how these guys are doing it, you have a ranger that collects the money, it gets counted separately later, and then they run, the LE, the law enforcement runs and looks at license plates. Now if I can ride a bus, I'm not going to have a license plate, and it'll be much easier for me just to camp for free in your park. So just a heads up on that. And I have a feeling it's going to be a huge problem in Hidden Valley.
Thank you for that good point. So we will look for that huge problem, and when it comes, we're going to figure out a solution for it. And it may be human power, having rangers there that are there a lot more often. Now Bernadette's been recruiting climbing stewards that have been up there. Now they've been primarily working on climbing, projects, but it's conceivable that we could also recruit a, campground host in that area as well that might be able to do that as well. So there's possibilities out there without having to do, staffing. We might be able to do it for free. Yes.
Will you have a tent-only campground?
Will we have a tent-only campground? It's something that I would love to see, having camped next to RVs before, who they take out their Toro generator and they put it on the other side of their RV, so it's right next to my tent. So I can, it's like a drum into my tent. We're looking at it. My hope was that we could do something like with Bell or White Tank and make those into tent only, because White Tank is really difficult to maneuver around with an RV. So in general, it's kind of a de facto one, but it'd be great just to put it on paper. It's kind of a big management decision, so we'd have to kind of do a public meeting like we're doing right now and work it with the public to make sure they're comfortable with that. But I'm keen on it. I see a need for it.
Middle of the 5th, Astros are up 5-0.
Go Astros. Oh, I'm sorry. No. David, I totally get from an administrative and management perspective why you guys are looking at this. And I use the campgrounds a lot. I'm in and out of them all the time. I see the traffic that drives through at 10, 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning looking for campsites, so I understand. But I also know that most people in LA, San Diego, Joshua Tree, 29 Palms, Yucca Valley, Palm Springs are not planning their trip to Joshua Tree 6 months in advance. And if you go to Reserve America today and you look for a date anytime from really February through the end of next April, they're gone. All those campsites are reserved by people who have the time and the resources to, and the ability to plan their trip from New York or from Europe months and months and months and months in advance. So I think that you're going to see local communities, even local Southern California communities who typically are like, hey, let's go to Joshua Tree this weekend, lose the ability to do that. And it will only be people who've been able to book their trips, know that they are leaving to go to Joshua Tree at a specific time of year, that be able to camp in the park.
So Kelly, just realize that those people have already lost the ability to camp in Joshua Tree. When I work West Entrance and I'm working traffic on a weekend and I'm talking to people and they're like, dude, I want to camp tonight, am I going to go? And I'm like, dude, everything's full. It's been full for 2 days. And it's like every other car, it's, dude, I want to camp tonight. I got my firewood, my off-leash dog, I've got my drums. I'm going to play in the campsite all night. I have to tell them, like, hey, man, I'm really sorry, but, this is Joshua Tree. 3 million people come here a year. We've had 500,000 people camping here this year. I'm really sorry, man, but you got to really think ahead. Come on a Wednesday or Thursday. That might be one way you could sneak into the park and get a spot, but right now we're disappointing hundreds of thousands of people already. So I'm really hoping that local businesses will be able to grab onto that, as much as possible. Places like
Lake Joshua Tree, 29 Palms RV Park, other places, are looking for it. The Elks is now renting spots, behind the Elks. So there's opportunities there for businesses to fill in that niche or niche, if we're going to speak French. Any other questions? My God, there's no questions. Okay, the meeting's over. So if you've learned nothing tonight, everything is a work in progress, especially with the buses and the camping. So what are you going to do if you want to make a comment? You're going to pick up one of those cards over there, and you're going to email or you're going to write a written comment to Washington about the fee increase. I'm going to linger around for a while. The staff's going to be here, grab onto us. Thank you guys so much for being here tonight. Go Dodgers.